All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Am I good, Kathy? Good to go. Okay. All right, so welcome everybody joining us here in person as well as online for our new moon meditation meeting. Today is January 28th, 2025, and we're so glad to have all of you joining us here today. Yeah. Oh, it's okay. Give us 1 second. All right, so as I said, welcome everybody. Glad to have everybody here. As many of you know, we meet here at the new moon meditation meetings to participate in a meditation to strengthen the hand of the new group of world servers. This worldwide body of men and women are as diverse in their backgrounds as they are united in their will to serve and to do good. Members of this group possess intelligence, they possess a practical and visionary idealism, and they possess a spirit of goodwill. Above all, they strive to live and to work as souls, and are thus allied with the outstanding quality of the soul, love, wisdom. Our meditation work seeks to strengthen and intensify the power of the soul as it works through them, through this group, to consequential and much needed effects in the world. So tonight, the meeting of our theme takes its place, a more specific theme within the overarching theme of this support of the new group of world servers. The theme of tonight's meeting is World Goodwill and the Divine Plan. So we will begin with a short presentation on this theme, followed by our meditation, and we will conclude today with a group discussion. So just like the full moon, the new moon serves as a point of focused power in the monthly cycle, and so is a propitious time for occult work. The new moon, being the lower interlude, highlights the basic objective of occult work, which is to reify spiritual energies so that they may enter into form and find expression in the three worlds. Occult work adjusts the outer form to align with the subtle nature of the self, which is its cause. It externalizes and makes manifest the immanence of deity, which resides in all things. So at the new moon, our major focus thus moves from alignment and identification with the will of God to the question, how can that will, as embodied in the divine plan, work out through the medium of the human? What role can I and my group play in this great work as souls who are also human beings and as disciples who are pledged to the service of the highest good? The refocusing of our attention to a needy world is the essence of discipleship and the occult approach which underlies it. This needy world is the field of redemptive opportunity, and this field comprises humanity and all lives in the three worlds. This is the place where the totality of the effects of the World Discipleship Group work out. We recall that disciples are those fully dedicated but not yet fully illumined souls. We work from and within the field of consciousness, but the work of this group, of the discipleship group, can and must produce effects within the world of form. Discipleship service thus has to do with creation, with creativity, and the right adjustment of forms. It is, however, a creativity which adjusts the outer by way of alignment with the inner. It doesn't just build forms, it transforms, transmutes, and eventually transfigures them. And it does so through the subtle power of the self or soul. Through this power, soul and personality, cause and effect, will and intention are unified and made one, thus bringing about fulfillment, spiritual achievement, and ultimately redemption. And so, as we focus our attention this evening on world need and on these redemptive possibilities, let us take just a brief moment for a group alignment, followed by the noontime recollection. We will use the plural we instead of I as we affirm our shared group intention. We know, O Lord of life and love, about the need. Touch our hearts anew with love, that we too may love and give. Oh. Today, humanity faces a time of great uncertainty and rapid change. There is acute psychological strain, a seeming crystallization on all sides, while at the same time, an opening of a door of real spiritual opportunity. Those dedicated to world service and to the furthering of humanity's spiritual evolution are necessarily asking the question, what can be done today to ensure that humanity maintains its steady progress towards its spiritual goal? The ageless wisdom teaches that humanity is preparing to set its feet upon the probationary path, which is the path of conscious spiritual pursuit. It is the start of a journey which will see humanity as a whole begin to assume the mantle of responsibility for its spiritual destiny. This, our present time, therefore heralds a new era in planetary service, one which is conditioned by new potencies and new opportunities, which of course bring with them their new problems and new difficulties as well. In such times as these, we should expect an intensification of crises rather than their lessening. Knowledge and clear vision of what is right and good must be our guide as we enter into an era of both spiritual illumination on one hand, and on the other, an intensification of those karmic liabilities which powerfully tempt the human race off the straight and narrow. One of the roles that the World Discipleship Group can play is embodied in the allegorical separation of the wheat from the chaff. In other words, clearly distinguishing those elements of human thinking and discourse which are temporal and of form from the spiritual principles which are fast becoming a powerful factor in human affairs. These spiritual principles, regardless of the form which hides them, are the foundation upon which the way forward can and must be built. One of the responsibilities of the new group of world servers is to provide a vision of the way forward. But as disciples who function within the heart center of this group, our responsibility is not just to see the vision, which is a mystical pursuit, but rather to pierce to those essential qualities which give the vision meaning, direction, and substance. We then embody those qualities through our lives and in our work. Disciples don't just vision the plan, they identify with it and thus give it living form. And this is because the divine plan is much more than just a vision or an ideal. It is a reservoir of spiritual energy, of dynamic substance qualified by the will of God. It is the highest formulation of divine purpose which the World Discipleship Group can possibly comprehend. Its three major goals are the revelation of love, the illumination of the mind, and the evocation of the will. The plan is based on the ideal of brotherhood, on the will to good, and on the freedom of the whole. The coming era, the Aquarian Age, will see the raising of human consciousness to such an extent that intelligent men and women will be consciously in touch with the world of spiritual ideas whereon this plan resides. This will greatly facilitate its more perfect expression. But a real and expressed intuitive perception will then emerge as a consequential factor in human civilization. This will lead to an era of group good, group understanding, group interrelation, and group goodwill as the Aquarian Age proceeds. This year, 2025, is officially the end of the Age of the Forerunner and the start of a new cycle. Like all new cycles, it brings new potencies, a renewed vision, and a new understanding of what can and must be done to tread the next phase of humanity's spiritual journey. Times of renewal and of beginnings such as this remind us of the need for adaptation. The inner spiritual life is, of course, the seed, which germinates and eventually blossoms into spiritual maturation. The seed is eternal. The outer form, however, which is its vehicle, naturally tends towards crystallization. It must be cast off and created anew, fit for purpose in each cycle. On the discipleship path, one works to free oneself from the limitations of form so as to better serve the inner life. This results in that special and redemptive power which we are told is the keynote of every disciple. Behold, I make all things new. As such, disciples are asked to rise above ideology, above partisanship, and above attachment to the forms which are at best only partial expressions of truth. The disciple works in and through these forms, but remains unattached and thus fluid in his or her ability to discard them when needed, or else to shepherd them into closer alignment with their higher purpose. The placing of an intuitive vision which is perfect and formless into any form, such as a human ideal, will always leave some gap unfulfilled. And doing so thus requires an act of compromise on the part of the disciple, a partial and relative success being the best possible outcome of this very exalted, very high creative work. And it is for this reason that the Tibetan encourages his disciples to do what they can to master the art of compromise in all their work. And importantly, he distinguishes between two types of compromise. There is one which attains balance purely for the sake of material expediency. This is a material compromise. But another type, one he refers to as spiritual compromises, which he refers to as spiritual compromise, compromises in order to place decision on the side of spiritual values and that which brings about the greatest good for the greatest number. The disciple who is free from bias always throws his or her weight upon the side which best serves the plan. This requires a proportionate understanding of the factor of time and a recognition that evolution is a living process. It requires the maturation of love into love wisdom. Another of the important and defining qualities of the plan, and one which the Tibetan emphasizes constantly throughout his published writings, is the principle of freedom and of free will. The plan is never imposed, not by hierarchy, not by well-meaning disciples, not by the intelligentsia, nor by any one class of men. Humanity chooses its own destiny, and the plan must be freely chosen. It is incumbent on us, therefore, to respect humanity's choice, whatever it is in time and space, and to always support them by demonstrating that is really living the higher way. To this end, disciples can help by distilling the great ideologies of the world down to their spiritual essence, so that those elements which are essentially good can be preserved, while those elements which are limiting can be cast off and discarded. Through the power of trained observation, disciples can usefully mediate between the conservative and progressive approaches at play, or really any set of adversaries or pairs of opposites. It's not really a question of, say, globalism or nationalism, progressivism or conservatism, socialism or capitalism, or even communism or democracy. Rather, the question for the disciple is, what end do these ideologies serve? And how can they best be spiritually put to use? Of course, this then brings us to that ultimate and most difficult of questions. What end precisely should we be seeking to bring about? How do we define it? And what does it look like in context? Of course, there's probably 1,000 different ways to answer that question. And so I very much look forward to our discussion today after our meditation. But one way to throw light on this question of what the plan is in specific context, how it should be applied, etc., one way to answer this question is to look at what the Tibetan has written about the work of hierarchy and of his ashram in the immediate cycle. The hierarchy are custodians of the plan, and they embody the plan in its fullness. The Tibetan writes quite definitively about the major movements in hierarchy, which are to be expected at this dawn of a new age. These include the externalization of several of its ashrams, the reappearance of the Christ, and of course, the restoration of the mysteries of initiation. All of these can be seen as literal physical plane events, which of course they will be, but they can also be seen as phases and the manifestation of the soul of humanity and of our planetary life. The Tibetan initiated a number of activities which were intended to prepare human consciousness for these very major events. And one of these activities was the work which is known today as World Goodwill. Now, what differentiates World Goodwill from the many NGOs and philanthropic organizations around the world, what it offers that is unique and important, is precisely what we're focused on today: the plan for humanity. This is its occult and esoteric contribution, and today more than ever, humanity is hungry for the depth of meaning and significance which the esoteric or occult approach can bring. World Goodwill offers a deeply meaningful and principled vision of humanity's spiritual potential based on the universal spiritual principles which all men and women can innately recognize. The triangle's work, another activity very close to the Tibetan's heart, provides a subjective companion to world goodwill, and it plays a major role in the movement of ashramic energy into the objective world. Triangles aims to create a network of light and goodwill in the etheric body of our planet and to act as a mediating agent between the higher and lower worlds. More information on these activities is available on the Lucis Trust website, and of course, you can always write to us to request more information. And so now to conclude, I'd like to just leave us with a quote from the Tibetan, which will segue directly into our meditation. He writes, "Forget not that meditation clarifies the mind as to the fact and nature of the plan, that understanding brings the plan into the world of desire, and that love releases the form which will make the plan materialize upon the physical plane. To these three expressions of your soul, I call you. All of you, without exception, can serve in these three ways if you so desire." Strengthening the hands of the new group of world servers. Group fusion. I am one with my group brothers, and all that I have is theirs. May the love which is in my soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in me lift and aid them. May the thoughts which my soul creates reach and encourage them. Alignment. We recognize our place as a group within the heart center of the group of world servers. Mentally extend a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy, the planetary heart, to the Christ, the heart of love within hierarchy, and towards Shambhala, where the will of God is known. Fire interlude. Hold the mind focused for a few moments on the planetary role of the group of world servers, mediating between hierarchy and humanity, responding to hierarchical impression, and mediating the plan into existence. Meditation. Reflect on the seed thought. Through the impression and expression of certain great ideas, humanity must be brought to the understanding of the fundamental ideals which will govern the new age. This is the major task of the group of world servers. Precipitation. Visualize the precipitation of the will to good, essential love, throughout the planet, from Shambhala, the planetary heart, the hierarchy, the Christ, the new group of world servers, through all men and women of goodwill everywhere in the world, and finally, the hearts and minds of the whole human family. Lower interlude. Consider the many ways in which the power of the one life and the love of the one soul are working out in the world through members of the group of world servers, so building the thought form of solution to world problems. Distribution. As a great invocation is sounded, visualize the irradiation of consciousness with light and love and power. We will use the original version of the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. All right, thank you, everybody. So we move now into the discussion period of our meeting. And so the floor is open. I've said quite enough, I think. I'm sure you're all sick of me. So I will now just turn it over. I will say though, before we start, there's a discussion question on your leaflets if you're in the room, or on the PowerPoint if you're there. You can feel free to comment on that, on the role that crises are playing in the plan. Or of course, there's anything related to the ideas brought up in the presentation today, the role of creation and creativity, the role of compromise and modifying, qualifying, and adapting the plan, um, or anything really at all, even the results of your meditation this evening, if you'd like to share those. So the floor is open. And to raise your hand, if you're online and you'd like to speak, all you need to do is raise your hand and we'll unmute you. So we'll just take some silence until, people collect their thoughts. Go ahead. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation, Michael. I really appreciated that you wanted to talk about the plan during Aquarius, because I think, the two go very well together. There's something, the Aquarian energy just seems to really inspire that desire to find sort of order in the world and to really find the parts that might be missing in that order in your own consciousness. And I think we can look around and see that humanity's become very good at doing a lot of creating, but there's the part that seems to be lost is the focus, the central point that makes all that creation make sense instead of just a lot of furious running around and making forms and creating things. And I think a lot of people can see a lot of that disorder and confusion happening because people have lost some of that synthetic focus. And I think that's why talking about the restoration of the mysteries is also so important right now, because the mysteries are this wonderful repository of central principles and purposes and ideas that help focus and order our creation. And humans are very creative, but without that central, those principles, it all kind of goes amiss. So we're in that time right now where people are figuring that out and realizing that we need to restore those kinds of focusing elements in our culture. And one of the things about the new group of world servers, since we're talking about the new moon right now and strengthening the hands of the new group of world servers, is that I think people who have really become part of that group, whether consciously or unconsciously, have realized through their own work that there's things that they share with others that go beyond their culture, that go beyond their ideologies, their politics, their religion. There's core principles that when they hear them being spoken by others, they realize they're part of this larger drive, and everybody's hearing and recognizing these things. So I just see more of that happening. All of that, those outer busyness and creativity, people are starting to listen and hear and find these points of union with each other that go beyond all the differences. And the more we do that, I think the more people are going to be finding those points as ways of creating harmony and unity and order with each other and pulling us out of all of that disorder and confusion.
No, go ahead. So you can go ahead and unmute. Kathy, you can say who it is.
John.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, friends. I've been meaning to relate my thoughts for some time, so I'll be brief and succinct. When we talk about the turning of the age from Pisces to Aquarius, it's no secret that there's great distress in the world today, a pulling between the ways of the past and a calling towards the future. Often we talk in our get-togethers about the need for a compromise and the requirement to stand in the middle, to choose the middle path. But I've felt for some time and feel it strongly today that we now find ourselves on the Kurukshetra, the place of testing that we'd heard about in the Bhagavad Gita, where the prince must make that most difficult choice between the two sides of his family, neither of which he wishes to harm, and both of whom he loves. I feel that we are at that point now. Of course, I understand that it's the long-held position of Luce's trust not to take a political stance. Tibetan did write extensively in the Discipleship in New Age 1 and 2, in the run up to the last great conflagration about the need not to try and meditate the evil away, but the necessity for all to play their part. I say this not as a bringer of gloom or a harbinger of difficult times, but merely to share with the group that as we stand here with the water jar on our shoulders, prepared to pour out waters for thirsty humanity, to remember that even in the act of Aquarius, it is an act of sacrifice and of diminishment and of releasing. And so I'll leave you with the thoughts as we stand here on the plane of Kurukshetra. What choice must be made? And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, John. Those are really great thoughts and very close to my heart, actually, those things that you brought up. I would agree with you and just add that, the Lord Krishna's advice to Arjuna on the battlefield, Arjuna was paralyzed into inaction, actually. And so that was his real dilemma. And Lord Krishna said, do your whole duty was his response. It was definitely don't do nothing. You're in a righteous war. There's nothing, better for a warrior than a righteous battle. So fulfill your duty as a warrior. That was what he was asked to do. And now the age that we live in, though, I hesitate to. I actually had a part in the talk where I talked about the battlefield and what that meant and how I thought that should be interpreted in light of present events and in light of our discipleship responsibilities. And I cut it out. But I would just say, well, one thing with regard to the Lucis Trust, our the way we see our duty above all is to stay partisanly neutral. That for us is the place of power where we work and where we can bring our work forward. It's our responsibility for each of us to decide what ultimately that responsibility is, what it means to take the righteous path. But I would always add that, ideologies, positions, partisanisms, national allegiances, any of those things are always forms. This is what I was trying to get at in some of the words that I shared. And it's for the disciple to definitely work in and through forms, but never to be attached to them and to allow that sort of fluidness to permeate their work. So just personally, I do not believe the situation we're in today is anything like the World War, when the battle forces of light and evil were so totally divided and arrayed against each other at all. I think we're in an era where a much keener sense of discrimination is needed, wherein basically everything is a shade of gray, and it's up for us to determine what is the chaff, what is the wheat in every instance. That's my personal opinion. And so, of course, everybody's welcome to theirs. But thank you so much, John. That was so great. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's really wonderful.
Thank you, Michael.
There's another hand, Maria Christina Donadue. Can you unmute?
Yes, thank you.
We
Can't
can't
hear
hear
you.
you at all.
Oh, I don't know what to do about that.
Can you
Just
get
turn
closer
your
to your
volume up.
microphone?
And turn up your volume, perhaps. Did you want to share, Marie Christina? I'm asking you to unmute again and try.
Can you hear me now?
Better, yes.
I do have thoughts, but I would just simply was going to request that, could you share again that last quote from your presentation, Michael, before we segued into the meditation itself?
Yes, I don't have the correspondence here, the citation, but I'll read it for you.
Please.
It says, "Forget not that meditation clarifies the mind as to the fact and nature of the plan, that understanding brings the plan into the world of desire, and that love releases the form which will make the plan materialize upon the physical plane. To these three expressions of the soul, of your soul, I call you. All of you without exception can serve in these three ways if you so desire."
Thank you, because I think those are very key words that have to do with the actual appropriation of substance. The plan is constructed. It's a scaffolding that is built by a rarefied substance. And as we invoke or touch upon and resonate with the substance of the plan, then that in itself, regardless of our place in the world, we transmit that substance, and that contributes greatly. And I will tend to agree that I don't think neutrality is called for. And I do tend to agree that it is also not a political issues these days, but cultural ones, that we need to look at our cultural values of traditional, moderns, progressives, the positive and the negative of the cultural values that we hold. And I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Sissy, would you unmute your microphone, please?
Let's see if this will work.
Yeah, we hear you.
Well, I greet you all. Namaste. What I wanted to do was to sort of invite you to some of the work that I am doing and explain why I went in this direction. I am from the USA, and the day after the election, I was very upset, but I did not want to linger in negativity. So I asked myself what I thought the core issue was for me, seeing through the eyes of the plan of love, light, wisdom, power. And I decided to reread the book Glamour, A World Problem, and also the Seventh Ray Revealer of the New Age. And those led me to decide on a meditation that I do every day to disassemble the concept of greed, the glamour of greed that surrounds the wrong use of desire. And I really feel like greed is such a powerful force in the world today, and a negatively powerful force. I believe the next teaching is right stewardship. And I believe the idea that a handful of people have the concretized spiritual energy of money, and therefore the power to seed and grow things, and that are holding it in selfishness is wrong-headed, wrong-hearted, wrong-minded. And so anyway, every day I spend part of my meditation envisioning the actual form of the glamour greed surrounding our planet. And I ask the divas who have built this thought form at the direction of many human minds to release their job, their task, and return to their Lord and take a break. And I believe that work would benefit from many minds and many hearts. So I invite you all to consider joining me, trying to dissolve, not attack, but just just dissolve the glamour of greed so that it can free up the necessary resources for right stewardship. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really, really appreciate your thoughts on the matter. Not to downplay or anything, of course, what you've just said, but I just do want to share that with regard to the dissipation of glamour, one warning the Tibetan does give about that work, which we should keep in mind, and of course everybody's free to participate in that work as they see fit, is that a stage of preparation is necessary before going about that work, wherein one can be sure that they are totally themselves free from glamour, and that their intentions in doing so are free enough that they don't accidentally and subtly fuel the glamour. As we know, energy follows thought. And so there's a certain measure of technique and alignment that's needed to do that work safely. And so if anybody was interested in doing so, I would just advise them to make sure they reference the Tibetan's writings on the matter and study those for some time before
Right.
begin. Yeah.
Yeah, and
you.
every day I say there's on page 218 of Glamour a World Problem. He gives three how does he put it? Difficult phase of the work in which the worker names the glamour and sees it in the process of dissipation. And there are three sentences that he has you visualize. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour, greed. The power of the light negates the quality of the glamour, greed from affecting me. And the power of the light destroys the life behind the power of the glamour, greed. And so
Thank you.
it needs to be carefully done, but I think it's time.
Thank you. I don't want to stop the next person who'd like to share from doing so. Just to say we are almost out of time. We can continue the conversation. If some people need to go, you can, go ahead and head out. That's fine, of course. I think we'll continue maybe for another 5 to 10 minutes if make sure everybody has time to share what they'd like to. Excuse me. Just to say, I was thinking about John's comment a bit earlier, some further about that, the Kurukshetra comment and about Arjuna and what it really means to tread the middle way. I think we have to be really, really careful. The middle way is always the difficult way, basically. And so it's never the righteous way, which is easy. It's the righteous way, which is difficult, in my experience. And so I think we have to, always keep that in mind. There's a real glamour about the glamour of righteousness, basically. And so it's, Arjuna, the last thing he wanted to do was do his duty. It was the absolute last thing he ever wanted to do, and so perhaps our duty today is equally difficult, and equally unpleasant to carry out.
Well, one of the things that, what everybody's been saying that's really making me think about, these different energies that are coming in, like the fourth ray that's coming in. The conflict, in my mind, is what can bring clarity, because when people are in conflict, they always assume their position is the right one.
Yeah.
In comparison to the person they're in conflict with. But oftentimes, if you're honest with yourself, the conflict can bring a new position through that neither of the people who were in conflict could see before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that compromise. But it also means that you have to let go of your glamours. You have to let go of some of the thought that you thought was correct to allow this third option to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And it means you have to have some understanding and compassion and acceptance for the person you're in conflict with. and really see them as the person who has the same desires that you do for harmony, for peace, for greater beauty and truth to come through, but they just have different ideas about how that might happen. And so to really bring community through, to allow that the soul to come through, both people have to be willing to examine those positions. And, I think it's interesting too that, DK is saying to us that the two main things that are happening now is preparation for the reappearance of the Christ, and also the recognition of the new group of world servers, and that we're part of that, because the purpose, being the Ajna Center, is that we are being prepared to have that unifying vision. And we've had to go through that process of purification to let go of these separative thoughts that have pulled us apart. And that's why it's a group of people from every race, every culture, every religion, every political ideology, because those are the forms they've come through. But it's not how they identify themselves. They identify themselves beyond that. And that's why they've been given the responsibility to hold that vision for humanity, because they can.
Mhm.
And that's the gift. And we're trying to add to that, empower them to let go of more glamour, clarify those principles, those thoughts that will strengthen that position so they can really hold that for humanity more than ever before.
Yeah, I guess what struck me today was during the meditation, the seed thought, the keynote. And it was just seemed to be an embodiment of one of these principles that the Tibetan's talking about, which I found really auspicious and interesting, about the unusual nature of something that's occurring now in our world. He says that it doesn't happen often in the long history of humanity that the two rays, that the ray that's going out will then follow by sequential order to the ray that's coming in. So we have that situation now. We have the sixth ray, which is very attuned to Piscean energy, being followed by a sign that is Aquarius, which is very attuned to the seventh ray. So it's not only the energy of the rays that are sort of following one on the other. In a way, it's the energy of the signs that are meshed with that. And so in our meditation, it says that the fundamental task of the new group of world servers is to embody ideas and to express them. And I think that is a very seventh ray activity, embodying them and bringing them down and impressing them on the collective of the new group of world servers, who then collectively express these ideas so that they can be touched by humanity as a whole. And he says that will lead to an understanding of the ideals of the new age. The idealism is a key issue today. There's a lot of confusion in all of our minds because one side of the aisle sees the ideal in this way, just like Maya was just saying, and the other side of society and the world sees the ideal in a completely different manner, kind of like we're not seeing through a lens or a glass clearly. We're seeing through a dark glass, and we're all disagreeing with one another. But it seems that the keynote is saying that if we can be able to impress a few ideas, fundamental ideas, on the fabric of humanity, then perhaps some ability to break through this distorted idealism can occur. And so that leads to me to wonder, as we've all wondered, I'm sure, using that seed thought, what are these fundamental ideas that need to be embodied and impressed on the minds and brains of humanity? It seems like there's so many of them, you know. The idea that death is an illusion is kind of a big one, you know. I think that as death is revealed as an illusion, I was just reading about it today. The Tibetan was talking about some, as the ajna opens, as people begin to see etherically, as new types of photography are developed, which see the aura, see the etheric energy surrounding each person, this will lead to the recognition that death is an illusion. And it will lead to a synthesis between the inner and outer worlds, hence to a belief in another reality, God, if you want to say. And I think that in and of itself is going to be fundamental to discovery of the soul, to the recognition of the soul, which leads to the recognition of hierarchy, which cuts through all of these distortions, will help to cut through the distortions. So there's 2 more hands raised here. Can we have time for those?
Sure. Like I said, if anybody needs to leave, that's fine. We can do 2 more and then be done with it.
iPhone 9. Can you unmute? There you go. Hello?
Oh, is that me?
Did you want to raise your hand?
Yes. This is Rosella. I think things are unfolding exactly as they should right now. Because for me, the role of the planet and the role of humanity is to bring together extremes and through that to create harmony. So unless all of these conflicts the conflicts have to happen in order for us to make the choices to create that harmony. Because that's why we're hearing more and more people, recognizing that we are one source. I think the work of getting through all of these conflicts and coming to something more central and something that allows us to remember and recognize what we are at our core, that we are all of the one same source and the one same energy. That is what is that's what's gonna allow us to move to the other side after having gone through all of those conflicts. The creation of that harmony is what's gonna allow us to move to the next level of evolution. And that's pretty much what I want to say very briefly.
Thank you. Eduardo?
Hello, everyone. I was just thinking about your quote, Kathy, from St. Paul, that now we see through a dark glass. It's interesting that in the Bible, if we read the Greek text, it says, now we see through enigma, something that we have to reinterpret as a hieroglyph, we have to decode, so to say. So in a way, it relates to the idea of having ideas that we have to transmit, we have to, in a way, interpret, and in some way it connects with the idea of meditating the plan into existence. And there was another thing that really caught my attention when you mentioned Arjuna's decision. There are other very interesting interpretations of that moment when Arjuna has to make a decision. And a very interesting one is that I heard from Ravi Ravindra in a Canadian Indian doctor who he said that indeed the decision was whether Arjuna should go down on the path of death, that is to say, go back to all dear things or slaying them. That would imply to take the path of ascent, what in Sanskrit is called the Nivritti Marga, the path of return. It's like the son who returns to the father of a famous biblical parable. So in a way, it was a decision of whether to submerge or go back on his steps, or to go ahead and thus fight the glamour, slaying the glamours, slaying all those dear things, so to say. So in a way, it has to do with glamour, isn't it?
Thank you, Eduardo. It's quite a serious thing to do this dissipation of world glamour. It's quite an advanced spiritual technique. In fact, I mean, for most disciples, I would say all disciples really, prior to initiation, are largely, not only, but very largely still concerned with their own glamours, which is a major impediment to their spiritual service. Of course, the attention isn't on oneself in the discipleship path, it's on the field of service. And yet the limiting factor in terms of glamour is quite often one's own demons, so to speak. And I would just add, I know many, especially those who are in the US, are very spiritually motivated by the recent election, well, not recent, but relatively recent US election. And it is a contentious issue, of course, and it's not our place as the trust to really say what one should think or do. But I would just urge anyone that it is engaging in spiritual work around the issue directly, just to consider whether one good measure of whether you're really ready to do that sort of work around such an explosive, contentious, difficult issue for so many people, and to really work spiritually. One good measure is to say, could I go up to, say, if the representative of that other side, whether that's Biden on one side, or whatever the essence of that position represents to you, or whether it's Trump on the other side, could you go up to that person and meet them as a brother, whatever that opposite side is for you? And if the answer is yes, I could greet that person as a brother, and not, then probably you're ready. But if you can't, if there's hatred there, then there's glamour. Because wherever there's dissonance, wherever things are not clear, can't think of the word, distortion, wherever there's distortion in relationship, that's where the glamour is. So I just leave that there. And of course, people are their own agents, always.
Well, and DK talks about this very quality of the new group of world servers members. That's exactly what they're able to do. They don't go to that other level
Yeah, it's
because we need that.
and of course this naturally becomes very US focused, but we have the same sorts of divisions in every country, political or otherwise. So it's of universal application, surely. But not the best note to end on. But I think we are probably closing up now. So maybe we should just end with a moment of alignment, and we'll just sound the Om a single time. Oh, thank you. The upcoming meetings are on the screen.